The city of ghosts and timber. Look at Cologne today, and you see a triumph of modern endurance, a thriving German metropolis anchored by one of the largest cathedrals in the world, and bound by the restless waters of the Rhine River. It is a city of steel, glass, and continuous motion, but if you were to stand on the banks of the Rhine in the year 900 AD, the city before you would be entirely unrecognizable. You are looking at a settlement trapped between two worlds. 400 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the city of Colonia Claudia era Agrippinensium is gone. In its place is a medieval frontier town of the Carolingian and Ettonian eras, built directly on top of and out of the bones of antiquity. This is a city of ghosts and timber. It is a place where medieval farmers graze their livestock inside the walls of the old Roman capital, where priests chant in sanctuaries built over imperial baths, and where Frisian merchants trade swords and slaves among the ruins of Roman glory. Today, we are going to walk the muddy streets of 9th and 10th century Cologne to see exactly what survived the collapse of Rome, what was lost to the earth, and how a new civilization forged its existence in the shadow of an empire. The skeleton of empire urban layout. To understand Cologne in the year 900 AD, you must look at its skeleton. When the Romans founded the city in the 1st century, they imposed strict geometric order upon the landscape. By the early 10th century, that order is actively decaying, but it still dictates the boundaries of human life. The most vital Roman survival is the city wall. Stretching for nearly 4 kilometers and studded with defensive towers, this massive fortification of basalt and tough stone remains largely intact. The medieval inhabitants of 900 AD do not have the engineering capacity to build a wall of this magnitude, so they maintain it. It is their primary shield against a hostile world. However, step inside those walls, and the illusion of Roman order shatters. At its peak in the 3rd century, Roman Cologne housed roughly 30,000 to 40,000 people. In 900 AD, the population is perhaps a third of that. The city is vastly underpopulated for its physical footprint. Because of this demographic collapse, 10th century Cologne is not a dense urban jungle. It is an agrarian patchwork. Large swaths of land within the defensive walls are empty of buildings. Where Roman villas and public squares once stood, there are now pastures for grazing sheep, orchards, and sprawling vineyards cultivated by the local monasteries. You could stand in the geographic center of this once great imperial capital and hear the sounds of a working farm. The great Roman street grid anchored by the north-south Cardo Maximus and the east-west Decumanus Maximus is still partially visible. These main arteries, paved with thick slabs of volcanic basalt, are too useful to abandon, but the secondary streets have been lost. Dirt paths now wind haphazardly over the buried foundations of Roman homes, bypassing collapsed monuments and carving a new, organic medieval geography over the rigid Roman grid, living among the ruins. Architecture and housing. If you are an average citizen of Cologne in 900 AD, you do not live in a marble villa. The architectural reality of this era is defined by scavenging. The ruins of Roman Colonia serve as an endless, free quarry for the medieval population. This practice is known as the use of spolia. Whenever a new church or defensive structure needs to be built, the builders simply dismantle a crumbling Roman bathhouse, temple, or patrician home. The beautifully carved Latin inscriptions, fluted columns, and marble steps of antiquity are broken down and mortared into rough, functional medieval walls. Domestic housing represents a severe technological regression from the Roman era. The Romans built in stone and brick, utilizing underfloor heating systems, hypocausts, and running water. The Carolingian and Ettonian citizens of 900 AD build primarily in timber, clay, and thatch. Houses are typically 1 or 2-story timber-framed structures. They are drafty, dark, and highly susceptible to fire. In fact, fire is a constant terror. Just a few years prior, in the winter of 881 to 882 AD, Viking raiders sailed up the Rhine, breached the city, and burned much of it to the ground. The city of 900 AD is a landscape in a state of rapid, traumatic recovery, with new, raw timber buildings rising from beds of ash. What of the famous Roman infrastructure? The Great Eiffel Aqueduct, which once brought millions of liters of fresh spring water into the city from the mountains, was destroyed by Germanic tribes centuries ago. Its towering arches in the countryside are now feared by locals, sometimes referred to as the work of the devil. Without the aqueduct, the Roman sewer system beneath the city no longer flushes. While some medieval citizens still use the ancient stone drains as refuse pits, the concept of municipal sanitation has vanished. Water is drawn from wells dug through the ruins, and waste is dumped into the streets or directly into the Rhine. The river road trade and economy, despite the physical decay, Cologne in 900 AD is far from a dead city. It is experiencing a massive economic resurgence, and its lifeblood is exactly what it has always been: the river Rhine. The Romans had built a magnificent, permanent timber and stone bridge across the river, connecting the city to a fortress on the eastern bank. By 900 AD, that bridge has been entirely destroyed. Crossing the Rhine now requires a complex system of ferries. Yet, the river itself is the superhighway of early medieval Europe. The economy of the Roman Mediterranean is a distant memory. In its place is a northern trade network. The masters of this network are the Frisians, expert sailors and merchants from the coastal regions of the North Sea. They sail their shallow draft vessels down the Rhine, turning Cologne into a vital transshipment hub. The trade is highly lucrative and distinctly medieval. From the south, local estates bring up vast quantities of Rhenish wine, a commodity highly prized by the Frankish aristocracy. Cologne is also a center for high-quality metallurgy, producing swords and armor that are traded across Europe. But there is a darker side to the economy. Slaves are a major export. Captives taken from the Slavic territories to the east are brought through Cologne, chained and sold in the city's markets before being shipped down the river to the Muslim caliphates in Spain or the Byzantine Empire. The wealth generated by this river trade is slowly pulling Cologne out of the Dark Ages, laying the foundation for the mercantile powerhouse it will become in the High Middle Ages. The lords of the Rhine, politics and power. Who rules this recovering, chaotic city? In the days of the empire, Cologne answered to a Roman governor and, ultimately, the emperor in Rome. In 900 AD, political power has shifted entirely. The city is technically part of the vast Frankish realm, specifically East Francia, the precursor to the Holy Roman Empire. But the king is far away. The true, absolute ruler of Cologne is the archbishop. The archbishops of Cologne are not merely spiritual leaders. They are feudal lords, diplomats, and warlords. They control the city's courts, collect the tolls from the Rhine trade, and command their own military forces. They have taken up residence on the site of the old Roman Praetorium, physically symbolizing their assumption of imperial authority. This concentration of power in the hands of the church creates a unique urban dynamic. The archbishop is the largest employer and the primary driver of the local economy. His court demands luxury goods, building materials, and food, stimulating the markets along the river. The citizens of Cologne, the craftsmen, merchants, and farmers, are essentially subjects of the church. While this provides stability and protection, it also sets the stage for centuries of bitter, violent conflict between the ruling archbishops and the increasingly wealthy merchants who will eventually demand self-governance. A city of saints, religion, and culture. The political dominance of the archbishopric is matched only by the absolute religious permeation of daily life. In 900 AD, Christianity is not just a faith, it is the fundamental organizing principle of reality. The pagan temples of Roman Cologne have long been torn down or buried. In their place, a ring of powerful churches and monasteries dominates the skyline. The spiritual epicenter is the Hildebold Cathedral, consecrated in the late 9th century. Built on the site of early Christian gatherings, it is a fortress of faith, designed to showcase the wealth and power of the Carolingian Church. But medieval religion in Cologne is driven by something more tangible than theology: relics. The physical remains of saints are believed to hold miraculous, divine power. They heal the sick, protect against disaster, and crucially, attract thousands of pilgrims who bring silver to the city's markets. Cologne is famous for its holy dead. The city promotes the cult of St. Gerion, a legendary Roman soldier martyred for his faith. His sanctuary is actually built upon the ruins of a late Roman monumental structure, perfectly illustrating the physical blending of Roman architecture and medieval faith. Likewise, the legend of St. Ursula and her thousands of martyred virgins is beginning to take root in this era. The fields just outside the Roman walls contain vast ancient Roman cemeteries. When medieval citizens dig in these areas and find thousands of ancient bones, they do not see pagan Romans. They see the holy relics of martyrs, creating a localized relic industry that makes Cologne one of the most sacred pilgrimage sites in Northern Europe. Daily bread and iron society and defense. The daily life of a commoner in 900 AD is defined by immense labor and the changing of the seasons. Society is rigidly stratified into those who pray the clergy, those who fight the nobility, and those who work the vast majority of the population. For the workers, the day begins before sunrise. The diet is heavy and coarse. Wheat is expensive, so the daily bread is a dark, dense mixture of rye and barley. Because the water is often unsafe to drink, almost everyone including children consumes weak, low-alcohol beer or diluted wine throughout the day. Pork is the primary meat, as pigs can easily forage in the surrounding forests and the empty, overgrown lots within the city walls. But hanging over the daily grind of baking, smithing, and trading is the constant requirement of defense. The memory of the Viking sack of 881 is a fresh, generational trauma. The world outside the walls is perceived as chaotic and deeply dangerous. Every able-bodied man in the city knows that if the alarm bells ring from the church towers, he is expected to drop his tools, take up a spear or an axe, and man the ancient Roman walls. The survival of the city depends entirely on the inherited engineering of an empire that died centuries before they were born. As night falls and the massive wooden gates of the city are barred shut, the inhabitants of Cologne retreat into the darkness, huddled within a stone perimeter built by emperors whose names they no longer remember, the soil of history. Today, the timber houses, the muddy streets, and the Frankish kings of 900 AD are gone. Even the great Hildebold Cathedral was eventually torn down to make way for the colossal Gothic masterpiece that dominates Cologne today. But a city is not a single thing. It is a stack of centuries. The modern city of Cologne could not exist without the medieval trading hub that grew up in the year 900. And that medieval trading hub could never have survived the Dark Ages without the massive stone walls and paved streets left behind by the Romans. If you know where to look in Cologne today, you can still find the remnants. A piece of Roman wall in a parking garage. The layout of a modern street that perfectly traces a medieval cart path. The past is never truly erased. It is simply built upon. In 900 AD, the people of Cologne lived in the ruins of the Roman world, using its bones to survive. Today, millions of people walk above their graves, continuing the endless cycle of a city that refuses to die.